Special meeting to order for Wednesday, January 23rd, 2026. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the special council meeting of Wednesday, January 21st, 2026? Councillor Ray, Councillor Bissett, discussion, all in favor? Good. Moving right into business here, new business. Charlotte is going to lead us through the various items in today's agenda. Charlotte, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone, and anyone watching online and visitors in the gallery. So today is the last scheduled budget meeting of the 2026 through 2030, pardon me, 5-year financial plan process. And we have a memo to review with council, some information to go over. We will have a look at the 2026 tax levy, and there's information on the regional district survey that is out for Area C with respect to the recreation services. That is also in the package. And public comments received on the budget increase have also been included. There is nothing scheduled in the agenda to go over them, but they have been provided for council's information, and if there is a wish to review them, we can of course do that. We have about 4 hours today. I don't expect we will need the full 4 hours, but if we do have that available to us. So in the memo, there are 2 asks outstanding. One is from the Cranbrook Public Library and one is from the RCMP detachment. Those 2 items we will be asking for a decision on from council on the asks that were presented at the December 10th meeting. The library is up first, and Ursula is online if there are any questions from council. Similarly, Staff Sergeant Graham is online if there are any questions from council on the RCMP ask. There are resolutions provided in the memo for council's consideration. I'm going to review the sections in the memo first, just give a brief highlight of what's in the document, and then maybe a discussion from council on whether or not the resolution in the memo is the resolution council would like to look at, or an alternate resolution. Before we put the motion on the table and then have to defeat the motion, let's just have a discussion if that's the right motion. So we'll go into the library first. So I'm sorry, I said December 10th. I meant December 13th, special meeting. Council considered information on the library. Similarly, at that time, there was a memo included outlining some potential cost-saving initiatives. One of those was switching year-end engagement from an audit to a review engagement. Since the December 13th meeting, we have heard back from the library's branch, and unfortunately, the lower assurance level engagement is not an option. So we must stay with the audit review, which means that there is no cost savings opportunity in that area. At the meeting, staff reported a potential another important initiative is the integration of the library into the city's IT operations. We reported a possible savings for 2026 at the December 13th meeting. Further examinations of the library's infrastructure and network security by IT have revealed that a less robust security environment and more end-of-life infrastructure than expected. Also, the savings estimate did not include a projected administration charge for city IT staff time. So given that while savings are expected in the future, savings realized in 2026 should be reinvested to improve security and have feature parity with the city's security baselines. Like the investment of IT expertise needed to bring the city's network to a better place, the library's network, while on a much smaller scale, needs attention before it can be integrated into the city's network. The IT group's ongoing work will focus on eliminating waste, increasing efficiency and security, with a focus on right-sizing and cost reductions. The chief librarian, Ursula, reviewed a presentation highlighting the library's role in the community and its ties with the city. Ms. Briegel presented the library's ask for $39,079, more than the planned 2% increase already incorporated into the proposed budget for 2026. The additional funds are required to maintain operations at the 2025 reduced service levels. Without the additional funds, service levels will require further reductions. So there is a resolution proposed that the city maintain the planned 2% increase, in essence not agreeing to the $39,000 increase. I just would like to highlight that the $39,000 increase is the full increase, and the city's portion, which is 80%, is $31,263. So would council like to, okay. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to put forward a motion that council increase the library's budget by $31,263, and I'm happy to speak to that.
Thank you, Councillor Stetsky. If I might, I do have an alternate proposal that incorporates that. What is missing in the resolution is also the 2%. I would like to see that we say 2% and the $39,079. So if I might, that council authorize increasing the Cranbrook Public Library annual budget starting in 2026 by $39,079 in addition to the planned 2% increase, the total increase to be split between the city and the regional district of East Kootenay on the established 80-20 ratio. So is that a resolution council would like to consider?
Much better resolution. I'll support it.
Your seconder, Councillor Ray. Discussion, Councillor Brissette.
Thank you. So what would be the net total then of the increase for the library?
Ooh, can I get back to you with that?
Sure.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So you're talking about the impact on the 567, right?
Well, the 2% plus then the 39. So what are we looking at?
Yeah, I will ask staff downstairs,
Sure.
who are online as well, to run those numbers and send them through to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Ray, then Councillor Teskey.
Thank you, Mayor. Last year, we, the whole team, management and staff, worked really hard on examining expenses. And I'd like to acknowledge Councillors Blissett and Councillor Graham. Councillor Graham's not here with us today, for really leading the charge on that. And that was very important work. And I appreciate that the library board participated in that and had to take back to their board that there was not an additional increase to their budget last year, and they had to make those difficult decisions and did so in a collaborative way, which resulted, they picked the least impactful way that they could, decreased hours in our library. And I really appreciate that they joined in the team effort to do that hard work. My concern for this year, if we were to not add the additional 39,000 and change, if you look at the full amount, is if we look again, if the library board were to go back and say, okay, we have to decrease hours again. My concern is that then that's decreasing, a warm, safe place where people can go to the washroom and have a drink of water and go on a computer, read a book. Those may be for folks who are in need for whatever reason, whether they're vulnerable folks or whatever, may be going on for them. That could then result in increased costs to the city, whether it's through bylaw or RCMP or other services. So I actually think it's a very economical deal to add the $39,000 and change to the library budget, because It adds value to our community, and I actually think it's avoiding other expenses, which could be quite a bit more expensive than maintaining the current service hours at the library, which were reduced last year. So I don't want to see another reduction in library service hours. I think the net value to our community is there to provide the additional 39,000.
Thank you. Councillor Stutzky.
Yeah, thank you. In addition to that, of course, we saw the public support for the library in the public survey that we put out, and of course, in the postcard initiative with postcards coming to the mayor and to the province. This would be an additional reduction on top of the reduction from last year, which led to closure of the library hours. And so the impact of not approving this motion would have to be, the only way is to further reduction in hours and potentially impacts on staffing as well. So it's a multiple hit if we do not, we still won't bring it back to 2023 levels because of the cuts last year, but at least it will prevent further cuts coming up in the next year.
Before I vote on that, I'd like to see what that does to our 5.67 total.
Okay. So the total increase before the Mayor Price through to council, the total increase of the 2% is $47,261. And that's the 100%. So I'll just have to run a quick note on 80% of that. And the 31%, the $31,000 increase, that would be the city's portion of the 39, is 0.08%. So it's minimal. Yeah, I'm just give me sorry. I normally have Charlene here with me, so I'm just, yeah, the 31,263, which is 80% of the 39,000, is 0.08%. And then I'm just going to run the numbers on the 80% of the 47,000 for a total for the city. So just give me a sec.
Councillor Bissett.
So Charlotte, this doesn't relate to the library, but it does relate to our finances in general. When we had a meeting, I guess it was just before Christmas, and we mentioned that we brought in over $1 million in building permit revenues. So has that been taken into account in that? Because that's pretty significant in our revenue side of things. And I just wasn't sure where that was in the budget.
Councillor Bissett through the mayor. We have the $1 million is in 2025.
Yes.
And so that is not impacting 2026. But what we have done is increased the planned building permit revenue, which was, I believe it was $450,000. It's been increased to $630,000. There is another proposal in your package today that increases it an additional $200,000 to $830,000. So yes, and the memo does also refer to our practice of budgeting conservatively for revenue. My concern, I think the 830 is, I think that's a reasonable risk. The problem is coming back down. So our average before 2025 was $350,000 a year over the previous 5 years, 2020 to 2024. So to come down from 830 even to 350 is a big drop, and we need some way to shelter that to not have to go from 830 to 350. And the way we do that is through the Financial Stabilization Reserve. The Financial Stabilization Reserve is not well equipped to provide that easier transition over multiple years currently. So the hope is that some of those funds that are coming in excess of what the budget is, if that actually materializes, would be reallocated to the Financial Stabilization Reserve. So that's the risk. But to your question, Councillor Blissett, it has been incorporated into the budget, yes.
Well, and I'm thinking that, so this year's building permits are next year's taxes, because those people will be paying taxes, depending on some of those. I understand public things or not, but I would think that should also help the tax situation. Maybe we don't get as much in building permits, but we're getting more in revenue from those homes that now exist.
Councillor Blissett, thank you for that through Mayor Price. Yes, so absolutely, this all this impact or all this building that's happening currently will result not in more taxes, but in a bigger tax base. So it will be new taxpayers, in theory, contributing to the pot, if that makes sense. So if more taxes come as a result of the budget going up, that's more taxes. A broader tax base comes from the new development, and it means that a bigger pool is contributing to pay the taxes. So that's what happens. And no question, the building permit fees and that first year that those buildings are actually taxable, of course, that's the non-market change. So there we are expecting to see some very healthy non-market changes in the future over the next few years. So those very high building permit revenue numbers that we saw in 2025, should the building get built and, should everything progress as it normally would, then you should start to see higher non-market changes in 27 based on what was brought on the books in 26 and on and on and on. And at some point, a building is only a non-market change once. It's a non-market change in the first year that value hits the assessment roll. And then it starts contributing to that bigger base that's paying into the taxes. And Councillor Blissett, as you were mentioning, one of our largest developments in 2025 through to 2026 is the green home. And the green home is exempt, and there will be no taxes collected from the green home.
Thank you. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you. It was on my list for discussion this afternoon as well. So 2025, there was over $1 million, if I remember right, in new revenue. If we look at 1% of our taxes being around 360,000 or so, somewhere around there, potentially that was 3% worth of taxes collected for the building permits, et cetera, in 2025. And I remember staff saying they expected to the same or more potentially in 2026. So when I looked at that and I looked at our tax rate and I looked at ways to reduce our tax rate, I was thinking about whether or not it was worth risk managing 1% or 2% of that money to reduce our taxes going forward from that perspective. And I was thinking, 1% at least would probably not be too much of a risk. And I did hear your explanation of putting it in and having, more money available in case we need it in the future. But I still think we should probably consider whether or not we can reduce taxes at least 1% based on those new revenues coming in for next year.
Yes, and Councillor Stetsky through the mayor, just a couple of things on, just to get a little granular. Yes, 3%, but the million, there was a budget. So we're not a million over budget. We collected a million. So the budget, I think, was 350, something like that. So we are for sure significantly over budget. But it was probably one of our few revenue items where we saw it on the positive. And we have certainly, we continue to struggle to catch up with price increases, cost increases. So there, you know, as we've talked about many times, there haven't been significant surpluses over the past few years to help offset where we have tried to hold back on the budget in order to not let the tax increase be too high. In the past, we had, you know, some padding. We don't have that padding anymore. So it is things like higher than expected interest revenue, which we've also seen over the last few years, that have come in and helped offset some of those higher costs that we purposely held back on because it would simply have resulted in far too high a tax levy increase. So we've been trying to massage those increases into the budget. So the key point there was just to say that it's not a million over budget, but for sure there's a significant amount over budget. The budget right now for 2026 in building permit revenue is $630,000. If council remembers, that also was to, in part, cover for the additional building inspector development temporary position. So that is coming out of that higher increase. And we have put forward a further increase to the 2026 budget to bring us up to $830,000 from the 630 to do exactly what you're saying. It's not 1%, it's an additional $200,000, not 384, which we would need for 1%. And we are definitely starting to get close to that $1 million target that we hit in 2025. I don't know what 2026 will bring. And, you know, I mean, as engineering has said, they have said it could be more. So.
Okay. Yeah, Charlotte, just before we move on to Councillor Ray, I just want to mention that, yeah, that building inspector job is coming out of that. The 2-year term on that. So for 2 years, we're paying out of the building permit and building value revenues. I think we got to be really careful. If you know, certainly record year this year, and that's wonderful to have a record year. I could see certainly what I see on the books next year could be another record year over this year. And I can see it being very close to that, or maybe even more in 2027 with what we sort of see on the horizon. So we have a little boom. It's a boom. That is not going to be sustainable, I don't think, you know, longer term. So, you know, we are going to be relying on that financial stabilization reserve down the road. And it's not in very good shape right now. And, you know, I think that has to be a key focus. When we're making these additional revenues, that's the place that it has to go. That's the reserve that has to be considered, is that financial stabilization, because in 5 years, when things level back down and the unexpected comes up, we better have that money on hand. Because, you know, if you're going to put it out there into these programs, those are only one-offs. Now it's in there. Now there's an expectation that that's going to be there every year in some of these budget lines. So we got to be extremely careful with that. So I agree with you, Charlotte. You know, that's got to be the priority with some of this new income that we're getting that is not guaranteed income. You know, it's not a generational income. Yeah, Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that we're doing some pre-discussion on some items that are coming
Yeah.
up later in the memo, but that's all good. We're getting ready. Just in terms of the motion that's on the table, we are fighting to get this tax increase down as much as we can. Everybody around the table totally appreciates the concerns about affordability. And of course, this level of government is only one level of government among others where affordability is a concern. We can only control what we can control here. So I don't take it lightly to suggest this 0.08% increase to the tax levy. I believe we're going to have discussions throughout the afternoon that are going to help mitigate that. And I think this 0.08% to the tax levy is either revenue neutral or is going to save us money in other services. It's way more economical to support folks at the library than it is to have people involved with our emergency services and those kinds of things. So anyways, I just want to reiterate how seriously we take this, and we're doing our very best to get that number down.
Thank you. Okay, so we got the motion on the floor. Charlotte?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to wrap up the question about how much exactly. So the 2% increase is $15,998. With the $31,000, the total increase is $47,261, resulting in a 0.12% increase.
0.12%?
Yeah. Councillor Stutzky?
Wasn't the 2% already accounted for in our budget estimate?
Yes, it is.
So
So
adding 0.12, we're adding 0.08.
correct.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. So the next item for consideration is the RCMP request. The RCMP at the December 13th meeting requested that Council consider adding 2 additional funded positions. We are currently contracted for 26 funded positions and 4 unfunded positions. The 4 unfunded positions are the intent of those positions were to create a buffer in the event that of the 26 members, some were away permanently or long-term. And if that happens, if 2 of the 26 are away, but 26 are assigned to Cranbrook, Staff Sergeant Graham cannot bring in more. He maxes out at 26. So the intent of those 4 was to give some buffer to allow the 26 to happen. So those are still on the books. E-Division has made it very clear that if we ever hit 28, we are responsible to pay for 28. That hasn't happened. But this ask is different from the asks that Council have approved in the past, which were originally 2 unfunded positions and then an additional 2 unfunded positions. And that's now put us at the 4 unfunded and the 26 funded. So the ask is to increase the 26 funded to 28 funded. The resolution in the memo is that Council deny the request to fund the 2 additional positions. So looking again for a Council comment on whether or not that's the resolution.
You have a resolution that you're proposing?
I do. I'll
I
read
think, Charlotte, maybe we'll go with what you're proposing and work around that. Yeah.
Okay, so the proposed resolution is that Council deny the request to increase the Cranbrook RCMP municipal establishment by 2 funded FTE positions.
Moved by Councilor Bissett, seconded by Councillor Ray, discussion. Councillor Ray, Councillor Statsky.
Thank you, Mayor. So just going from some of our previous discussions about this, and I mean, it certainly is a complex challenge. Like it's coming from a very complex system with the RCMP. So maybe a question for Staff Sergeant Graham online. I think what I've heard around the table is that our previous strategies around, which have resulted now in 4 unfunded positions, to me as a layperson, it seemed like the strategy was to raise the ceiling in order to raise the floor. That's sort of the basic way I can wrap my head around it. And so the floor to me is like bodies in the detachment. And it seemed like the concern around the table was, even though we've tried a couple times to raise the ceiling in order to raise the floor, that we weren't actually successful in increasing bodies in the detachment. And I mean members. That's better language. So for Staff Sergeant Graham, you know, sort of recognizing that frustration around the table, and I know it's frustrating for the detachment as well, what has been the impact of the 4 unfunded positions? Like, has it had any impact?
Good afternoon, Mayor Price, councillors, staff, and members of the general public. And thank you for the question. Might need some leeway to kind of explain where we got to with the unfunded plans. Like back in 2021, our member utilage, the FTE, it dropped significantly. On that number of 26 that Charlotte had mentioned, we utilized 20.57, and we recognized a trend that we would see more absenteeism, basically from medical, parental leave, different impacts that are covered by the province, but as we've discussed before, it doesn't help with our boots on the ground. So we work closely with the municipality on getting ahead of that with the unfunded positions. We first requested 2 in 2020. I think they're approved in 21-22 fiscal year. And despite that increase of 2 onto the 26, we saw it drop, it dropped to 8.41 below. So your analogy of the increasing the ceiling to increase the floor, exactly like our utilization that year was 19.59. It would have been 17.59 without those 2 positions. So we went back to the table, looked at it, requested and were approved for another 2. And we saw the utilization drop, or still stay below at 5.41. It dropped 7.48 below in 23-24 and 8.17 below in 24-25. These are significant numbers that if you look at 8.17 below 26, you're looking at 18 police officers to do what 26 did back when we hit our max funded increase in 2011. So it was effective. I don't know if I explained that well in the past, but it was effective to offset operational collapse, basically. And over those years, like 2021, where the contract strength was still at 26, we returned $1.1 million in unused budget, specifically salary dollars. That went into I believe, the financial stabilization reserve at that time. It was almost $700,000 a year after, $136,000 a year after that, $500,000 a year after that. So we've been a contributor to that, and we'd like the opportunity to be able to contribute to that. And this is our first request for funded regular member positions since 2011. We recognize completely the impact adding that to the budget would be in this era of the challenges where you're trying to get the current levels down. And this year alone, we've spent a lot of money, and inefficient money, bringing in members from out of region to keep us from operational collapse. And despite the significant spendings on overtime and travel, even at the conservative forecast at this point, we're to return $267,000 to the municipality. a number that will grow based on our abandonment of the overtime. And when we break down what it costs per month and all these different things, our FTE trends are still going to be low. No matter what, you can add 4 members on. We're not going to spend our current budget, but maybe the solution is meeting in the middle, adding the 2 funded positions. The division has told us that they don't do the unfunded model anymore, and other detachments tried to get on this train after we did, and were unsuccessful. But if we were to do add the 2 members and do as was effectively implemented by Charlotte in the past, risk manage at this level of 26. Don't increase the budget. Make those decisions. It may even be beneficial to take the money that we will give back this year. The longer you get into the fiscal year, the more stable the forecasts are. I anticipate the return will be much more than the 267 right now. But if that were to go into a police reserve, it would even insulate us even more. The hope is with this model that we pitched with the crime reduction members is we can reduce our costs even more. You get ahead of the crime trends. We've seen it with the hotspot patrols, bringing in the extra members. It's been effective. But basically, we would still, if you funded us at the 2011 model of 26 FTE, increase the 2 members, but continue that, we will have an efficient product that will be able to continue to return money. That's not our plan is to make the maximum use of our resources. We know realistically that it's a challenge. We do know we have mitigation strategies should we have everyone show to work. We can lend members out to other detachments and get full cost recovery for that. We can run vacancies. We've been successful in doing that. Just right now, it's much cheaper to have a local, buy local, rather than bringing members in from out of town. It's critical to our support to the municipalities, and the citizens of Cranbrook have spoken to the impact of crime. We want to be able to free up the resources to work with our bylaw team. We want to be able to get ahead of the crime trends. It's much easier. Our team yesterday solved a stolen vehicle break and enter file before the owner even knew. Crime reduction, people being out, knowing who's who, not being tied down with other emergency calls for service. It's a better model. It'll help, but whether that is realistic today, I'd like to start those discussions because we'd like to be able to improve our service to the community, and it's getting more and more of a challenge to do. Like I said, 2011 was the last funded increase. We don't take it lightly when we come looking for extra, but if that middle ground is add the positions and maintain the funding model that the numbers show consistently, we'll be able to meet. Perhaps there's consideration for that.
Thank you, Barry. Councillor Steske.
Yeah, thank you. This is always one of the most difficult discussions we have because the public very much values the RCMP, as do we. I'm going to touch on 4 aspects. So if all 26 members showed up for work, we'd be fine. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and of course it's hard to predict where things are going to end up looking ahead to 2026. But one of the struggles I have as a councillor is we're funding 26 members, and trying to, if in theory all 26 of them showed up for work, that should be the objective as best we can in some way. And I know there's lots of aspects to keep us from not achieving the 26. But again, when you sit and look at it on principle, we're funding 26 members already, and that would serve the community well. Having said that, I'm not sure whether the city and the RCMP have sat down and had a serious discussion about splitting the duties and who should be responsible for what between bylaw and the RCMP. We've talked in past that potentially bylaw costs us less to have a bylaw officer than we do RCMP. But if we haven't had that discussion, I really think that discussion should occur in the next year, because maybe the result would be a proposal to have more bylaw officers, as long as the split in responsibilities is fairly clear. Related to that, we've talked about the RDEK, perhaps paying for more policing, and I'm not sure whether for Norma or, Councillor Blissett and Mayor Price, where those discussions are at, if anywhere, with the RCMP and the RDEK.
The discussion with the policing isn't between the RDK and the city. It would be with the city and the RCMP on how they want to balance that.
Okay.
As we know, the statistics last year, the year before, and I believe the year before, were 19% of the calls, that the detachment gets go into the regional district. And, that's an issue all over the province right now. What somebody in the regional district pays for policing compared to a municipality is literally a fraction. Mark, do you remember the numbers of our most recent numbers? We looked at something last week. It did what our numbers were, and then in the regional areas there, it's blows your mind actually when you see it.
Yeah, Mayor Price, just following up on that, I don't have it right in front of me, but I believe RCMP costs in Cranbrook, Charlotte, you can jump in. I think it's around $549 per household is our RCMP costs. And then when right now, we're part of a group of mid-sized cities. And I don't want to name the city, but there's a city on the coast that's about our size that's also struggling with this. But their policing budget's a little larger, but they've been dealing with that disparity between the regional district and the in-town taxpayer. And theirs was about $800 and some per household in the town, and out of the town, it was about $79 per household for policing costs. So the disparity was huge, and the resource take was far greater in the regional district around. So theirs is much more skewed than ours. So when we now, the mayor and I are active in a group of mid-sized cities that are all struggling with this, and there's certainly worse cases out there, but we certainly could have a better split and scenario here on how that is allocated. So we are working with our local detachment and with the province and with the RCMP on looking at different ways to rebalance that model, but it'll take a little time.
So should the RDEK be the one that's approaching the RCMP for more support, do you think?
No, I don't know. Barry could maybe answer that, but that comes down from a higher level in Barry's pay grade. That's coming down probably from, is it from the Southeast Division or something, Barry, that make those decisions? And I think it's even up above that. It's probably got something to do with Police Services Act or something, where it does deal with non-municipal areas.
Yes, that's correct. It's way above my pay grade, and those formulas are at the divisional, provincial level, and we recognize that disparity as well. There's we would like to see some balance come with that. But if I could speak to maybe the first point from Councillor Stetsky with the bylaw efficiencies over RCMP, we do, and we look forward to having those discussions. Amanda, for one's done considerable research with a number of other municipalities about the cooperative models, and one thing we found is that there's still a significant RCMP component. Some of the duties that we're looking at, that are recent challenges over the last few years, it's difficult in a civilian capacity to be able to address it. There are some community constable models, different things that can certainly offset some of the pressure. But at the end of the day, I mean, we've lost a member going to one of these high-risk calls in the Lower Mainland, and that's devastating from the police standpoint, and putting like civilians with less training, less tools at that risk is difficult. But we can certainly share all that information. We'd like to look at all the options, but we do know that police are involved significantly in every model.
Fourth and final thing for me, I guess, we had a meeting with the Honorable Brittany Anderson, Minister for Municipal Affairs, and one of the messages that we left with her, and maybe we want to follow it up with a letter, is that from a rural perspective, in communities that are the centers for working with our homeless population, potentially there could be an argument around the province that additional RCMP support should be funded for those rural municipalities that are the centers for working with our homeless population. And I saw them take notes about that, and maybe we can see something come from that. But to me, it would make absolute sense. You look around the province and you look at the smaller rural communities like Cranbrook, which are the center for the East Kootenay for homelessness, because we have the social services and the other things here to help that population. There is also a policing element that I think should go along with it, and that the province should consider funding throughout British Columbia.
Thank you. Certainly from my perspective, as Councillor Stetsky mentioned earlier, it is frustrating. We do have a contract in place, an agreement in place, with the RCMP to provide 26 members. And it's really unfortunate that our local NCOs, have to be in the middle of this year after year. The shortage of staffing, this problem is really at a higher level. This is about honoring a contract. And I understand, the challenges that the RCMP have with resources, but the bottom line is we're paying for 26 officers. We're averaging 22 to 24, the last number of years at best. 22 point something, I think, is sort of the average. And we're supplementing at times, paying overtime. And so, it's kind of like if you have a contract for somebody to do a job for you and all of a sudden their guys aren't showing up and they got to fly guys in, you're not going to pay for that. And that's what's happening. This is very expensive. What was our overtime, Charlotte, RCMP overtime bill last year?
Ooh, I don't know off the top of my head, but it was significantly higher than budgeted. And similarly, of course, there's a less pay in regular pay, but what you're referring to is also a travel budget that was completely passed by several $100,000.
Yeah.
So,
It was
Seal
over
Fisher?
$1 million, I believe, our budget, overtime budget last year. And
Actually, I have the numbers here because I just had it in my package from preparing for the meeting with the other communities. So I can just say the last year's overtime budget was $448,000. The actual overtime spent, as you said, Barry, is $1,120,712. Travel budget $32,000. Actual spent $244,591. So yeah, those are the actual numbers are quite high.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So anyways, that's when I look at those kind of numbers, certainly the RCMP, and this is not on our local NCO at all. This is a I would say a violation of our agreement. Really, it's not in accordance with our with our agreement with the RCMP. Those costs are significant. Again, you know, we provided 4 watch clerks over the last number of years to try and put more efficiencies into the boots on the ground level. My understanding is as well that, you know, certainly the last couple of groups that come out of the depot there, not a lot of resources were coming to BC. No, that's what I've heard. And even the chances of getting 2 members this year, is it even feasible? And what concerns me is this is a year we really have to keep the budget down. We you know, I want to see the number under 6%. So, you know, we start adding 2, and the problem is we could add that to the budget, and it might not even materialize. That you know, they can't get the numbers there. You know, that up to 28. You know, as Councillor Stetsky said, if we had 26, probably life would be a charm. You know, we'd be doing pretty good if we had 26 members on the street, you know, all year long. And that just doesn't happen. It's not happening in any business today, you know, with the way things are today. But you know, and I look at our bylaw and our RCMP. CO Virtual has been working with Staff Sergeant Graham and Amanda, you know, to restructure our bylaw. That they'll be working under Amanda through the RCMP, so they will be working hand in hand, and it's up to Amanda's right now working on I guess a strategy to kind of develop a bit of a hybrid kind of department there that she's going to be using when we're out. So she's on that right now. I really think that will make a difference. Further, what Councillor Stetsky said about meeting with Minister Anderson, you know, she was quite sympathetic to the fact and really hadn't given it much consideration in the past about the regional centers, the impact on regional health centers. Cranbrook, in general, Cranbrook, Kelowna, Prince George. We get the lion's share of the regional people in here, and we're not getting policing resources, which probably should be provided through the province. And if they're not police resources, we've talked about maybe other resources, you know, maybe we need community liaison people or mental health liaison people that the province could provide that are working directly with the RCMP on some of these things that would relieve the RCMP of a lot of those typical daily calls that they're running, you know, throughout the day that these liaison people could be working on. So she was going to look into that. So, you know, so where I am right now, I'm just, you know, I think for this year, I'd rather hold the line this year. But, you know, back to Barry, you know, year to year, I would put this in the budget next year again, bring it up next year, and let's just have a look at, you know, how things are changing. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've got a question for Staff Sergeant Graham and then a couple of questions for our CFO. So Barry, you know, we've had a very hard time filling our current complement of members. So,
I'm sorry, Councillor Ray, he just dropped off, so I'm just going to text him and get him back. Something happened here.
okay, I'll start my question with our CFO then. So Charlotte, as Staff Sergeant Graham alluded to, is there a way to add these positions without increasing taxes? So he referenced the previous strategy of risk management. So that, to my understanding, is keeping the current budget amount, not changing that amount, and that it would be risk managed to stay within that amount. So is that a possible strategy?
Councillor Ray, through the mayor, that is a strategy we employed in the past. But no, if it's that's what the unfunded positions are intended to do, is to allow those to surge up. And as Staff Sergeant Graham said, had it not been for those 4, I don't know what our utilization numbers would have been. If we contract for an additional 2, they will try to provide an additional 2. And then, I mean, yes, I can say, no, the budget will not contain the 500 and some thousand dollars for the additional 2 members. But if they show up, or if they show up, we have to pay. So we were very confident in the past of, typically what we would risk manage is about $200,000. Not a member, but $200,000, and Division E in their budgeting process. And sometimes I think we did 250. They interpreted that as a member. That wasn't our intent. So there was a little bit of miscommunication early on when we were doing that. But the intent was not to say, you can only budget for 25. You go ahead and you budget for 26. We are risk managing the budget by 250,000 or 200,000. So that was the sort of the methodology at the time. I am very nervous. I would be very, very nervous about risk managing. Risk managing $500,000+ would make me very nervous. Last year, I said, under no circumstances would I risk manage even $200,000 because we saw a deficit. So Staff Sergeant Graham is right. In the most recent financial statements we've received from E Division, we are sitting at a $200 and some thousand surplus. But last year it was a $368,000 deficit. So the swings have just been so extreme that it makes me very nervous. It was easier when we consistently saw surpluses. At that point, we started to say, because what we would be doing is saying, we're going to tax for 26, and we know only 20 are showing up. So we started doing that, but then with these 4, with the buffer of the 4 and the collective agreement coming into play, all of that risk tolerance was eroded, in my opinion. My risk tolerance for this right now is really low. So yes, we could do it. We could do it, but it makes me very uncomfortable. Certainly 2, I would say, don't do it. 1, but I have no confidence. And also, we're coming in, they are currently engaged in bargaining. So what does that mean? What are the impacts of that collective agreement that results? What is that going to mean for the city? And just a point of correction, the surpluses that we have seen from the RCMP have been used to deal with the past collective agreement, the impacts of the retro pay and the signing bonuses and the vacation payouts. So they never did make it into the financial stabilization reserve because they were needed to deal with the RCMP costs.
Thanks, Charlotte. I'm back if I can chime in.
I'm just going to follow up with Charlotte, and then I just have a quick question for Staff Sergeant Graham. So Charlotte, like as you alluded to, it sounds like we've, when you had those surpluses and then you kind of segregated those funds and you were able to use them to help, as you say, pay for the retroactive collective bargaining agreement and vacation and all that stuff. So have we ever considered having a formal police reserve fund? I mean, it doesn't solve our HR problems and stuff like that, but I wonder, as part of our strategy, I just wonder if that would be helpful in terms of maybe transparency, so everybody would be on the same page.
Councillor Bassett, through the mayor, yes, and we do have that. We accrue costs. So it's not a reserve in the same way that other items are, because we actually record a cost. In the case of a reserve, it's not a cost. Where we accrue it, it is. So we would accrue the retro pay, for example, for 2025, we will be making an accrual based on what the information we're receiving with the financial statements. And I believe, please don't quote me on this, but I believe that they're recommending either 3 or a 3.5% increase based on, I believe it's your utilization. That's what ended up happening, not on the 26. So we do have that. And then we have similarly, there are some other accruals that have to do with Green Timbers, the building down at the coast. There are some other severance payments that we have been accruing for. So there is an amount set aside to deal with a number of issues related to the RCMP. That fund has been drawing down the 300 and some plus $1,000 deficit that we had in March of 2025 needs to be covered somehow. So the surplus that's coming in March of 2026 that we're hoping it will materialize, it will be needed to cover the deficit from the year before, in addition to the fact that we will have these commitments for the collective agreement. The collective agreements, that is a very new, I think it's a great thing for sure, but it has created uncertainty in the RCMP budget because the contract terms haven't been really, like there were a couple of really short ones, I think, and now here they are bargaining again. So you don't have an opportunity to kind of get your feet under you before there's, you have barely finished paying out the retro pay before you're now having to start accruing for the next group of retro pay or severance payments or signing bonuses or vacation payouts. So it has been a bit tumultuous for sure. But back to your original question, there is a fund set aside. It isn't a reserve, but it is an accrual. So there are funds set aside.
Thank you. And so my question to Staff Sergeant Graham is, it seems like we're really struggling to get additional members in the detachment to meet, our target levels. So if these two positions were to be approved, how confident are you that you would actually be able to fill those positions?
That's a great question. Really confident. We just had our most recent recruit show up on Monday. The training academy is in full operation. If there aren't releasable lateral constables, we've been supported to get recruits in, and we've been super fortunate with the quality of our recruiting so far. If I could speak to the
Sorry. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, and sorry for being dropped off there. I probably had the most eloquent words that'll never be heard. I can't remember them, but the budget, and maybe I had spoken to this before, it might help if one of our analysts is able to come in and do a presentation, because my understanding is a little different. We do have these retro pay issues that are a significant impact on any given budget year. There have been unforeseen things like signing bonuses that we weren't aware of. But my interpretation of each annual budget, like I'll see within that in the budget documents that the retro, for example, is included. But I think it was 22-23 fiscal year for us that one of the retro impacts happened, and we still returned 136,000. It wasn't. This is a difference in how the RCMP spends their money and returns to the city versus where the city puts it and uses it for the rainy day. So, the budget of 2021, where we returned 1.1 million, that wasn't, just didn't disappear. That we're happy to put it back in. We're not looking for Cadillac SUVs as replacement PCs for the following year. We know the way budgets work, but when it shows up the following year and we return $697,000, that's including the impact of that retro pay. It would have been significantly higher. So it might help to have clarification on that from one of our analysts. And I can't remember what the other outstanding question was. Sorry, to speak to, and I can appreciate the anxious approach to the finances, given like last year was the first year that we've gone over. Our utilization was low, and we wound up. That's when we first reached out to non-regional members to help. And it was difficult. It was, we were tripping over people at times trying to schedule. You can't anticipate when you're going to have those needs. We come up with a more efficient system this year. One of our staff come up with a fantastic booking tool that we were able to streamline the numbers where we need them, which is leading to a significant return forecast at this point. We're doing everything within our capability. We utilizing the 327,000 in CSEP funding, the 67,000 that we were approved last year for the site. Every time there's a Revoy offender involved in something, we are making that application. The emergency response team was normally a cost that we would absorb if it happened inside the municipality. The province has taken that on as well now. So there's still risk. We definitely can mitigate it. And I've shown that ability when we actually were overstaffed 2 years ago. We lent members out to 3 different units, and I think we still returned 300,000, something close to that year, even in those situations. So it's something that has to be monitored. It's something that I do. I look at the numbers. I do them. I check every possible scenario. Busy season coming up, things that I project. I really do. I like the thought of a dedicated police. You have to look at being better able to serve the community.
Thank you, Barry. Charlotte, question. I've got a line drawn in the sand this year. You know, we got to be under 6%. We promised 5 last year. But so that's kind of my line, is that we got to be under 6%. What would one position do?
Mayor Price, Barry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're in around 250. It might be a little lower than that. We might be up around 268. I think maybe 268 is the new number. So
That'll push us over that, obviously. Yeah.
To fund that one would be a 0.7 by our records tax increase, if it's actually going to be funded.
yeah, that's what I get to, Barry.
0.7? Okay. 579 now with the library. Yeah. Councilor Ray.
Charlotte, would risk managing one position, so risk managing to the current budget, so no tax increase, would risk managing one position, how would that feel for your risk tolerance? It's okay if it's still not good.
It wouldn't be my preference.
So, Charlotte, it's where I'm at. Again, I want to be under 6, so that'll take us to 586. Oh, certainly, the citizens right now, the biggest issues in our community right now are homeless and crime, as seems to be the biggest fears in the community. Okay, I want to support the RCMP and our police as much as I can. I mean, but we gotta be realistic. What are we gonna see? You know, I'd be in favor of supporting one this year, seeing how that goes, and go year by year. Again, we're looking at, a total retooling of our bylaw organization. We don't even know the impact of that yet, and they're going to be working very close with the RCMP. So, I think, and one thing that's critical that people have to remember, when our bylaw people or the mental health people, the people that were dealing with the homeless, in the homeless situation, with the, drug addiction, the mental health, they're doing an incredible job out there, but they cannot go into these areas unless they have an RCMP officer. So, I'm looking, that one more body, it could make a difference. And I'm willing to accept, that on top of what we've got here. We're still under 6, so it's something I'd consider. Is that correct, Charlotte? Is my math out to lunch here?
If we add $260,000 to the budget, we will be, hang on just a sec. Sorry, I've got a minus in front of that.
Yeah.
It might be important for budgeting as well, if I could interject, that it's going to take quite a while if we're able to have that approval to get the positions created and then to start the staffing action. So you can budget like 1/3 of the year for the actual impact on that, if that helps.
Oh, thanks, Barry. Yeah.
The increase that I'm ending up with is we would be sitting at 6.45. Adding $268,000. We're sitting at 5.67. We've added 31,268 for the library. We're looking at adding another 268,000.
Okay.
That puts us at 645. Now we have other options for reductions, i.e. the building.
Yeah, maybe different. Councilor Messina.
So I would also say that a very big concern of our population is the tax increase.
Mm-hmm.
We have received many letters on this, more than any time that I have been on council. And the reason for that, from what my interpretation of them, is because it's in addition to last year's increase. And so this is going up exponentially. That is a major concern of our population. Plus, we are already requesting more officers than we have. So I'm sorry, but it gets kind of silly to keep, we could ask for 50 people. Doesn't mean we're going to have any more than what we have right now. So I really think that we need to hold back on this. We should not be increasing the taxes for this, because we're not going to see the bodies anyways. And if they are coming, we still have room for them to come with the 26 we've requested and we haven't seen in years. So I think we leave it as is, we move forward, and then next year we'll have this, not me, but other people will be having this discussion again and see how it plays then.
Thank you.
That's
One
good
last
point.
round here,
Sure.
Councilor. Sorry, go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, no, if I could speak, that's a good point. And just to speak to that, sometimes we get lost in the usage. It's not that the position's vacant. Somebody holds that position, so we can't actually bring somebody in based on that. And I appreciate that 100% with the tax impact. And we've seen social media, we've seen the we get that 100% and can't speak to that enough. We don't want to be that impact. Preferably, it's the risk management option. And really, if you were to support the increase today, It doesn't mean the position has to be filled. If we were to do the administration, get the position in place, and at that time, like we'll be well past the end of our budget year, say, for example, if the numbers came through right now as is, $267,000, that's over the 268 of that one position, which offsets that. It could be, this is a follow-up meeting with that we discuss whether we actually staff it, leave it as a hard vacancy, or submit the memo to reverse it. But I'm confident that we will be over that amount and no impact tax-wise. That would alleviate the bulk of the concerns based on the fact that we will accrue that. It's not an official police reserve, but I can say that if you're willing to entertain it conditionally based on what we return and evaluate month by month, we wouldn't be that tax impact.
Thank you very, we'll go with Councillor Tetzke, then we'll call the vote.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate all the dialogue around the table. It's an important and complex issue. And as Councillor Lissette alluded to, I mean, I think I would appreciate looking forward if we could think about having a dedicated meeting around this issue. I think it would be great to bring in some RCMP finance people, talk about the bylaw integration, and just try to approach this with fresh eyes. So I hope we can do that in the future, and yeah, look at it with fresh eyes and consider new approaches.
Thank you. Councillor Tetzke.
Thank you. I mean, the lens for the meeting this afternoon is about tax increases or not. And I think I heard you say, Charlotte, that in all fairness, if we were to consider adding 2 members, we would have to show that as part of the tax increase, which would add another 1.4%. And I think that's kind of the bottom line for the discussion today, because this is all looking at what our tax rate should be and what the impact would be.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you. Take care.
Back to you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Mayor Price. So the next item is a resolution I've been looking for, or I'm looking for the Memorial Arena loan from the Moyer Park Development Reserve. So if council remembers, we borrowed $2.6 million from the reserve to repair the roof at the memorial. So that the way we did that was interfund borrowing, and that is permitted by the community charter. The community charter requires that if you do that, the funds in the lending reserve are not needed for the purposes for which that reserve was established, which was the case with the Moyer Park Development Reserve. There were no plans for the funds at the time. We borrowed, like I said, $2.6 million. In addition to paying that back, the community charter also requires that we pay interest on the amount as though it had stayed in the reserve. So the original discussion with council was to pay back the $2.6 million over 20 years, which would have resulted in a annual debt payment of $132,000 a year. There's a resolution on that we will discuss today, where we pause the payment of the principal, which is exactly what we did last year as well. And then further, there's a second resolution that funds the $92,000 and change interest in 2026. This is exactly what we did in 2025. We did not make a principal payment. We made the interest payment. That is the essence of this, of the piece we're at now, is to do it similarly for 2026. However, because one of the options that has been presented for council's consideration a little bit later in the memo involves not paying the interest portion of that loan, I've broken the resolution up so that the resolution to pause the principal payment is not tied to the resolution around the interest, so that we can get a resolution to not make the principal payment. And then if council is interested in looking at not paying the interest in 2026 as well, we can then go to another resolution that allows us to do that and not have to unravel the first resolution. So just in terms of the interest and the principal, quite frankly, I feel I consider the risk reasonable to not pay the principal payment. There's currently about $1.7 million in the reserve. And should there be a need to create, if it's going to be a full-fledged park, then no, 1.7 is not enough. Sorry, a further step back. The title for that parcel of land, it was a donated parcel of land, and it requires that ultimately a park or some recreation amenity be developed on that land. There are no plans right now to do that. Depending on the scope of what that is, if that is something council of the day decides to do, maybe 1.7 is enough. If it's not, then this 3 million or 2.6 million needs to be repaid with interest. My thought process around this has been, if we have to pay back the 2.6 million, that's one thing, but I had positioned us in such a way that the liability wasn't growing. So we're paying the interest, but we're not making principal payments. I feel that's a reasonable risk, given the uncertainty around what's happening with that piece of land. But council can consider removing $92,000 funded to pay the interest in 2026, and that would further reduce the tax levy increase. So I don't know if I explained that clearly enough, but essentially that's the thing here. For sure, I'm going to ask for a resolution to not pay the principal. So resolution number 1 is, I'm going to read that out, and I would like council to consider that. The resolution is that council direct that the 2026 principal payment of $132,000 be paused.
Councillor Statsky, Councillor Brissette. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Charlotte.
Okay. So the next resolution refers to funding the interest payment, as opposed to not funding the interest payment. Right now, the interest payment is included in the budget. So it makes up that 5.67 that we ended the day with in December. So maybe could we have a discussion around whether or not there's an interest to not fund the interest? Sorry.
Yep. Councillor Statsky.
I was interested in resolution 2. You don't include anywhere the $92,400, but that's what you meant, eh?
Yes, I can quickly
Okay.
insert that.
All right.
Yep. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I wonder if CAO Furcho might be able to speak to any mitigating factors in terms of the risk if we're to consider not funding the interest payment.
Certainly, Mayor Price, through Councillor Ray, I'm comfortable with the risk. We've got basically 2 initiatives underway that would resolve this in the future going forward. So I don't want to speak at length at those, but knowing where they are at, they're not final where I can give you numbers and all that right now. But from my perspective, this is a very comfortable risk to take.
You. Heather, on favor? Oh, did we not? Oh, sorry, Charlotte, call a motion.
Yeah, so the motion here is
Yeah.
to fund it.
Was to fund it? Oh,
Yes, there's a later resolution over where we're looking at options to reduce the tax levy further, that's the option that says we will not be paying the interest. So if council doesn't want to pay the interest, we'll walk away from this, we're done with this, and then we'll move on to the next section.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing is we will not look at option or at resolution number 2.
Yeah, I think that's the sentiment. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. So I have a note here that
So first,
was supposed to have been made at the beginning of the meeting. So there is food here, a couple of sandwiches and some fruit out front. And also just a final, just another item I didn't mention at the beginning, the council package has been republished because of the typos and a little bit of extra information on page 1 related to the library. So in case you haven't seen that. So 10, 15 minutes.
yeah, adjourn for 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Called to order. We'll now reconvene the meeting. Charlotte, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Price. So the next item in the memo will be a review of our municipal property tax. And I have a bit of a summary here of where we're at and how we kind of got there. So when the budget planning began, we were at 7.97 for 2026. And that was based on forecasts for 2026 using information known when we finalized the 5-year financial plan last February. Throughout 2025, cost increases in several areas, including RCMP, construction, contract services, road salt, and software licenses, continue to challenge the budget. Increases planned for 2026 had to be adjusted further upwards. On the other hand, staff continue to review fees and charges across the corporation and bring forward updated bylaws as directed by council to bring fees up to date and in line with the market. This resulted in budget increases to revenue. Through council strategic direction, staff have streamlined development processes that have supported a significant increase in development activity in the city. This increased activity ultimately leads to a more valuable tax base, spreading out the tax burden. In addition to the increased development activity, the increased development activity generates increased building permit revenue that helps reduce taxes. At the November 26th, 2025 special meeting, staff presented an adjusted 2026 tax levy increase of 6.5%. Council made 2 further adjustments to reduce that tax levy. The 2026 municipal grant program budget was held at the 2025 level, and the fire hall loan payment no longer needed because the loan was paid off, was not reclassified as a transfer to the facilities reserve. This meant it was no longer needed. These 2 changes reduced the tax levy by $315,885 and reduced the 2026 increase from 6.5 to 5.67. And then there is a spreadsheet in the package that provides additional details. I'm just going to request some assistance here. I'm going to put that spreadsheet up on the board. And then we can have a discussion about the options. Okay, so this is pretty much exactly the spreadsheet you have in your package. And this was the information that we looked at together on the 26th of November. And it shows the changes that were done to 2026 to result in the 6.5. So we haven't gone back and done 7.97, bring it up, and then bring it back down. This is what brought us to 6.5. One item you'll see here is, so the RCMP contract from 25 to 26 increased $483,470. But then in addition to that, we have been smoothing out the increases. We've talked about that. We didn't talk about it earlier today, but we've talked about it in the past. And this $196,065 is the very last of the surplus that we have had available after paying out retro pay, after paying out the various items that came with the collective agreements, and then smoothing out the increases that resulted from the various collective agreements. So this 196 was used in 2025 to help hold the tax levy increase down. And now, of course, here we are for 2026. That is no longer available, so it does represent an increase. So the 483 and the 196 is the total increase related to RCMP in 2026. So then you see here the 6.5, and then in since the November 2026 meeting, council made the 2 additional changes, which was to hold the municipal grant at the 2025 level. That reduced the tax levy by $67,656, and then not direct the relieved fire hall loan payment into the reserve. That added back an additional $248,229. So here today, January 21st, we are looking at the 5.67% increase that we've discussed earlier throughout this evening. I'm just going to get rid of that. So we have added the library increase, which is $31,263, being the 80% of the $39,000. So 3 additional considerations for council this evening are to not fund the interest on the Moyer Park Development Reserve inter-reserve borrowing, and we talked about that before the break. Increase building permit revenue by an additional $200,000, bringing it from $630,000 to $830,000. And then also, while council did discuss the 1% road dedicated tax at the last meeting, we are also putting that back out there in case council would like to reconsider that decision.
Councillor Stetsky has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. At the top of page 5, number 2, it says that doing that $200,000 budget increase results in a 0.73% reduction. Whereas in your first page, it says it's 0.52.
Pardon me, Councillor Stetsky, can you repeat?
Yep, so page 3 and the numbers that we had up there, it says increased building permit revenue by 200,000
Yes.
is a reduction in 0.52%. But if you go to the top of page 5, it says increasing the budget results in a 0.73% reduction.
Page 5.
Yep, number 2. Increased 2026 budgeted building permit revenue by 200,000 results in a 0.73 reduction to the municipal property tax levy.
Different page here. Different page. Okay, I see. Got it.
I see. 7352. The number in the memo, 0.73, because I was playing around with numbers, so that has not been, that's a previous number I was working with. This number here of 0.52 is calculating in an Excel spreadsheet, so the $200,000 is 0.52. Yeah, apologies for that.
Councillor Ray?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Charlotte, just in looking at the spreadsheet that you had up, I think it was showing 5.76. So I'm just wondering if there's extra decimal points that aren't showing or something, because if we have whatever our number was, 5.67 plus the additional 0.08 for the library, I think that's 5.75. So I'm not sure if you have additional decimal points that aren't showing that are resulting in 5.76 at the bottom.
5.756, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, because I was looking at just 2 decimal places.
Yes, I mean, sometimes when we are working with the decimal places, the
Yeah.
rounding, I mean, but we do have to agree on the number because it is a number we will be publishing and we definitely want to try to be correct, right? So
Yeah, so I guess my question would be how many decibel points are we?
I
going
usually
to?
use 2.
So, okay. So like, is the real number for 5.67, is it really 5.67 or is it 5.67 something? Anyhow, it's just a very Excel
Five-
detailed question.
5.675,
So that's,
yeah.
so yeah,
So it's
Are-
not rounding up.
okay,
Otherwise it would be 5.68.
exactly.
Yeah,
So then,
we are using 5.67.
okay,
And when I do run, like when I run when I run the tax calculation, whatever number we land on here, I mean, if we want to land on 5.68, that's the number I will be targeting. If we want to round up and then end up down below, it ends up being 5.6. 5.75, yeah, 5.76.
okay,
But it's a 6, it's 756, so it's rounding up,
yeah,
whereas the other one at 5 is not rounding up.
yeah.
For some reason.
I just wanted to double check, you know what I mean? 'Cause
Yeah, no,
when we only see 2 decimal points, but then you can tell from the rounding it's going
Yeah,
more.
and often, if you don't ever sit down and add up the financial well, you can, because we'll actually add $1 in the financial statements when we have rounding errors. So yeah, so it is 5.675. And with the library, we are at 5.756. Yeah. Yeah. So if we look at the interest for the Moyer interfund loan, it is 92,400. And that is the 0.24%. So bringing us down to 5.516. If we do the building permit revenue of 200,
Mhm.
that's the 0.52. Thank you, Councillor Stutsky, for catching that. And then the road dedicated tax is 384,090, I believe. Yep. And that brings us to 3.995.
Ooh. Councillor Brissette.
Thank you. So did we do both Moyer Park numbers on there? Because there seems to be an empty slot. Reserve
No.
interest borrowing, so
I-
that's.
Yeah,
doesn't-
no, it's
just
double.
not
It's
there.
it's
Okay.
a double line.
Okay,
So we've dealt with the 133
Okay.
principal. We're not doing that, and that was not in the
Okay,
budget. So that's
that's
just
fine.
council approving,
Good.
we're not going to pay that. This, however, the 92.4 is actually in the budget. We are assuming that the 92.4 will be paid. Now, if council wants to not do that, we would have to remove it.
but the thing is, we haven't discussed the 1% road dedicated tax. That still is up for discussion.
We discussed that at the last meeting, and there was a resolution to give pre-approval to the 1% road
Right.
dedicated tax.
So then how do you have a pause on that?
We would, I'm not sure if the right word is rescind the resolution. You'd have to rescind the resolution.
Oh, okay, so,
These are the 3 options that we're providing council with tonight. So the interest on the Moyer Reserve, further increasing the building permit revenue, and then revisiting the 1% road dedicated tax.
Councillor Stutsky.
Yeah, thank you. Personally, I think it's important to keep that 1% road dedicated tax on, given the complaints we continue to get about streets, potholes, et cetera, in Cranbrook. I'd be happy to go with the first 2. And that would then, depending on whether we go with what,
Yeah.
that would bring us up to 4.9 which, you could round it up to 5, I suppose, if we wanted, but I'd be comfortable with that. But I do think it's important to keep that 1% road tax in.
Thank you. Councillor Ray?
So just in terms of process, Charlotte, will you be walking us through the three options and the motions you have prepared?
Yeah, I'm happy with this conversation as well, but yes, that was the intent. And just in terms of the road dedicated tax, I think that, and I'll just double check with Marnie, but we have a resolution on the books. So I don't think we need another resolution if you just want to leave it there. And then just say, there will be no further resolution.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
okay, so I'll go ahead with, the first option, which is to not fund the interest of 92.4 on the Moyer Park Development Reserve. So actually I won't go through it again because I've already kind of walked council through that. So now the resolution is that council does not fund the 2026 interest cost of 92,400 on the Moyer Park Development inter-reserve borrowing.
Mover, Councillor Bissett, Councillor Stetsky. Discussion, Councillor Ray.
Thank you. So just, we've already spoken to some of the mitigating factors that help manage the risk around this. I just want to double check. So if we look to the future of the city of Cranbrook, what do you see in terms of risks if this motion is approved? And do you feel those risks are manageable?
Yep. Councillor Ray, through the mayor again, it's to me, like I said, there's two mitigating projects underway, where hopefully this whole conversation won't happen next year. So I'm quite comfortable that there is little to no risk to the city by doing this. But we did have to, entertain and have an official discussion with council in order to remove it, of course.
Thanks, Mark. Further? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks, Charlotte.
Okay, so the building permit revenue option is, as I've mentioned, is to increase the revenue by $200,000 to $830,000, resulting in a 0.52% reduction to the municipal property tax levy. The average building permit revenue during the 2020 to 2024 period was $394,000. The 5 years before that, the average was $250,000. In 2025, the city collected $1,116,294 in building permit revenue. The nature of the development cycle is represented by peaks and valleys. In the peak years, revenues are high, temporarily shifting some of the burden away from the taxpayer. It is important to take a balanced approach in dealing with these cycles. In the peak years, increase the budget revenue reasonably to reduce taxes, but also plans for the dips that will come. That planning includes maintaining reserve balances that will buffer the way down from the peak in the revenue cycle. The more aggressively revenue is budgeted, the higher the risk that the budget will not be achieved and reserves will be needed to make up the difference. The city's budgeting strategy relies on realistic but conservative revenue projections. So the resolution, despite that, the resolution is that council directs staff to increase the 2026 budgeted building permit revenue from $630,000 to $830,000.
Mover, Councillor Ray, Councillor Bissett. Discussion, Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Ray.
So short version is you're comfortable with 200,000, but you wouldn't want to go to a full 1%, 386,000 or whatever it is.
384,090. The struggle for me is that, Councillor Stetsky through the mayor, the struggle for me is that, so we're going to do all this hand wringing about an extra, $184,000. And I don't know what I'm going to be telling you at the end of 2026 in terms of how much more we actually brought in, because it's likely to be more, quite frankly. I can't budget for a surplus. So I don't want to be unrealistic and say, you know, hold it at $400,000. And in order to, you know, have some, like create a good buffer. But I am also cognizant of the risks with the number. So, you know, is 200,000 or 1% a hill to die on for me? No, it's not. But I am, the higher you go, the higher the risk. And so it is, you know, what you're, because at some point we will be going back down. And how do we manage that?
Go ahead. Yep.
Thank you. And you did say earlier, concern about the financial stabilization fund and that any excess from this would go into that.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. So Charlotte, as our CFO, regarding the motion that's on the table, what's your comfort level with the numbers we're looking at?
Councilor Blissett, through Mayor Price, I'm reasonably comfortable with this number.
Further? Call the question. No favor? Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Charlotte.
Okay, thank you, Council.
Card.
Thank you, Mayor Price. The last item is item 3, which considers pausing the 1% road dedicated tax increase in 2026 at the December 13th. Oh my goodness. At the December 13th special meeting, Council gave pre-approval for the general road dedicated tax increase, 1% increase. Council may wish to reconsider the decision and remove the increase from the 2026 financial plan. This would reduce the municipal property tax levy by $384,090 or 1%.
So Charlotte, I think we can have a short discussion here without having a motion on this. Certainly, I think everybody has their own opinion on that. So let's just maybe start with Councillor Ray and then we'll go around the table and get the different positions on this.
Thank you, Mayor. From my perspective, I vividly recall a presentation from Mike Matika where he was speaking to this issue. And my recollection from that, my key takeaway was that even with us continuing with the 1% road dedicated tax, we're actually still behind. So I believe it's important to continue with the decision we've already made to have the dedicated road tax proceed for this year. We're working hard to catch up with our infrastructure deficit, but we are still behind. So for the welfare of the city, I do not believe it's in our best interest to rescind the road tax for this year.
Thank you. Councillor Blissett.
Well, thank you. And also from the surveys that have been done of the public, they tend to be in favor of this, maintaining it even, you know, well, they want lower taxes, but they are still in favor of maintaining the road tax. So I think we should keep it.
Thank you. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, lots of good discussion when we made that original decision, and I'd like to stick by it.
Certainly my position, yeah, I'm in favor of keeping it. Further to Councillor Ray, our engineers have identified that we're really struggling to keep up anyways, even at this pace. It's a pay me now or pay me later. We certainly see costs on projects escalating every year. So, you know, to pull this would have, I think, there are consequences down the road, and it really is a bad precedent to set. The intention of the 1% dedicated road tax, for people that don't understand what it is for existing roadways and projects. So, you know, you see the conditions of the road and the failures out there. This is what the road tax is for, and I think that's what people have to understand is this whole budget in general. It's relative to this. It's extremely difficult right now for local governments to keep up. I know people appreciate and understand their domestic goods, the impact on their households, on their day-to-day. I've said this many a times. That's based on the CPI. CPI is domestic goods. You go down to the grocery store, it might be gas, it might be, our goods are industrial scale goods. And, you know, for us to keep falling behind is, yeah, is a really bad precedent. So pulling this would, we would pay the price later on down the road. In fact, I think, you know, if we see the days get better in time, I would recommend, you know, we're certainly not going to see it in the next few years, but consideration for increasing that 1% in time. Councillor Stetsky.
Just add one thing. It's been a difficult year already on roads. And when I sit at the stop sign in a number of intersections, we have a lot of roads that are really deteriorating.
Yep.
So a lot of work coming around just the intersections.
Good. Thank you. Charlotte, back to you.
Thank you, Council. So before I turn it over to CAO Furcho, I have a final resolution that's not in your package, but it concerns bringing the bylaw back for 3 readings. So the resolution is that Council directs staff to bring forward for 3 readings the 2026 to 2030 5-year financial plan bylaw, resulting in a 2026 tax levy increase of 4.99%.
Councillor Stetsky. Councillor
need-
Ray.
Movers.
Mover. Yeah, Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Ray. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much.
Okay, and now I will turn it over to CAO Furcho.
All right, thank you, Charlotte. So the next item is something that resulted in the tax survey we did. So as of 2 years ago, we began very deep engagement of the community on taxes and services. And so 2 years ago, we let the community know some of the challenges we have for costs in our services and our infrastructure, as we just discussed. And but one of the items was really critical was the cost of culture and recreation in the city, and how who pays is not really fair. So we've got the 23,000 people in the city that pay taxes that funds culture and rec services. And we have 6,000 people living in the regional district in Area C that do not. And yes, everybody does pay pool passes or for the arena or for the fields. However, everybody pays equally. So the folks that don't pay it on their property taxes are getting a substantial discount to those that live inside the city. So the number there we found was, if you did the math on the cost of the culture and rec services we have after income from the ticket sales based on taxes, that the Area C residents should be paying about $800,000 of that bill back to the city. So we're short every year about $800,000, and that's, you know, close to 3% taxes that are you know, they're essentially enjoying for free. So the conversation at the time was around, should we move to a two-tier system and have, you know, if you live in this, everybody pays the higher price, but if you live in the city, you get a discount because you already paid part of it on your taxes. But everybody else who comes and uses it, a visitor or someone from out in the RD, any visitor, non-tax paying resident, pays a slightly higher fee. So, or not even slightly higher, it would be a higher fee to make it fair. So the regional district heard us, and we've been working together with them ever since on that. So they came out with a very gently worded survey that I'm sure everybody saw. So we've got a letter in the package included. And so the survey is really appealing to folks that live in the regional district that use the recreational services. They may have kids or grandkids that like the pool and play ball and skate and use all the services, but they're not really covering the cost. So as budgets tighten and council looks to reduce tax levies in the future, the conversation always is, do we increase taxes or do we reduce services? And so that always falls on the municipal taxpayer. So in this case, there's a lot of folks using those services that are not helping to pay. So is there a way they can pay? So the regional district is going to look at whether they want to engage further after this first letter goes out in terms of creating some type of a service where they would pay a portion of that 800,000. It certainly wouldn't be the full shot, but a portion of that result, you know, if they would be willing to do that, then the regional district would look at how to ask the question officially and actually implement that. Failing that, this would be a conversation for the next council that comes in. If that doesn't pass, what do we do about that? Because the conversation about increasing costs and reducing tax levies and what do we reduce? Where do we get more revenue or where do we reduce are the big questions. So if we can't increase some revenue here for those costs of services, the next question is, do we charge taxpayers more or do we reduce the service? So thank you to the regional district for hearing us and asking their residents this question. I guess next stop will be the results of this. And so after the election this fall, we'll be certainly engaging much more with the new council on this conversation.
Mark, if I could just add to that, you know, I hope that the people in the regional district understand that, you know, they've had it pretty good for a long time. They've paid absolutely nothing. And the numbers you're throwing out there is for operational budget, you know, after what we make and everything, you know, after our revenues and everything. So, you know, that's not including any capital costs. And we see the capital costs have gone into that just in the last 2 years. That's not including any debt servicing for 30 years that we've been paying over $1 million a year. You know, when you look at $800,000, this year that's over 2%. Let's look at our 399. Pretty nice to go out with a 1.99, wouldn't it? Our taxpayers are coming to us and saying, you guys have to do this. Well, you know, our taxpayers, you know, I mean, you know, we recreate and I mean, we look at people in Area C as our neighbors, in fact, more than that, as our residents. Let's be honest, you know, they are residents. It's time to pay. We cannot carry this anymore. The next council, I don't know how we got down to this number. Again, it's incredible that we got down to what we did. But we could almost went with a zero this year if you think about it. You know, if they were paying their share, because, you know, we could be looking at, you know, some of the capital costs and things like that. But they don't realize that sooner or later, and we're very close to doing this. We tried a pilot project, okay? 6 months, we were going to just adjust the hours. We didn't make it 6 weeks. The outcry was incredible. So everybody wants us to either zero increase or decrease taxes. That's what's going to happen. And they're going to say, well, then get rid of staff. And we've heard it. Well, get rid of some of your staff. What people don't realize, you look at any of our departments, you get rid of staff, you're going to have to eliminate or decrease the programs. And the bottom line is going to be, what programs do you want us to get rid of? Because everybody has their baby in town. Everybody has their programs, you know, that they care for. It's impossible we can do that without these types of increases. This increase this year, this 399, is for, sorry, 499. Yeah, 499 is for exact same level of services last year. Nothing more and nothing less. You know, take the dedicated road tax off, like I say, RDK is paying. Life's pretty nice. That's less than 1% that, you know, that we're looking at. That's less than a 1% tax increase. So I just want to put that out there that, you know, I think that the residents of Cranbrook have to understand too, that, you know, it's challenged with us. And this has been ongoing from the regional district. And I know there's going to be reluctance and maybe pushback from people, but I can guarantee you, you know, this will go to a referendum next year. If, you know, if they don't see it, that they need to contribute, the next council is going to have to make some really, really hard decisions. And make no mistake, because the city of Cranbrook taxpayer cannot keep subsidizing their recreation. And that's exactly what we're doing. So I just want to make that point. And you know what? It's going to be that it's going to be more than just a contribution. You know, it's going to be either the rates are going to be so significant that, you know, the seniors and youth will not be able to participate in programs in Cranbrook. So it's just something to think about going forward. I don't want to sound heavy-handed, but This is a real frustration when we get the budget. And you know what? I've watched it for years. The councils get beat up every year because bring it down, you're coming in too high. Well, if we would have been looking at the operational capital costs over the years and had 20% coming in from the regional district, that could have made past councils' lives a whole lot better as well. So I just want to make that point and not go on about it too much. Anything further, Charlotte?
Nothing from me, Mayor.
So certainly, on behalf of council, very impressive. I don't think we would have expected this. I know at the very start, when you brought the 10 out, I know for a fact the numbers were up at 12 or 13% with some of the stuff that came in over the year, you know, I mean, things changed throughout the year. So your team, fantastic. All the departments and department heads, I think that to Mark and finance, you've refined the budget process. I think this is as good as I've seen, and we're constantly looking at ways of improving it. This year, the process involved drilling right down to staff, even to junior staff, commenting and offering suggestions on efficiencies and ways to limit the budget increases. So hats off to administration, your team, and staff. Thanks so much. Anything further from council? No. With that, I'll call for a motion to adjourn. Councilor Bissett, Councilor Stetsky, we're adjourned. Thank you.